Good day, Detective. I am Detective Jim.
And I'm Detective Kayla.
And we have a new Weather Detective case that we need to take a look at. We already posted obviously the first video earlier this week, and today's video is going to be our forecast and see if it lines up with what you guys said. We thank you so much for all your comments.
Yes.
You guys are doing really good with these.
We were lurking in the comment section and we saw some pretty darn good forecasts. A couple of you were spot on, a couple of you were in the right direction. Let's go ahead and dive into our forecast and see if it lines up with what you wrote.
But before we get started,
make sure that you like the video and subscribe down below if you find that you are enjoying yourself along the way. Also check out our school weather. It's a fun time over there with a bunch of you learning about sphere weather, learning about the beginning parts of meteorology. So you don't want to miss out on that. It'll be the first link in the description box.
Now on to clue number 1.
Alright, so clue number 1. We are once again looking at the upper level maps, and here we are looking for where the jet stream is, because the jet stream often gives us a good indication of where the strongest winds are aloft, which is the main driving factor for weather systems. So if we're looking for something associated with a front or a pressure system, looking at where the jet stream is a good indication of which states or part of the US to start looking at.
So taking a look at our image here, we see the blue color coding indicates the area of strongest wind. It helps us identify it a lot easier. So looking at our image, we can see we've got somewhat of a jet off the Pacific Northwest, and then we also have it coming down through east central Canada, down into the mid-Atlantic states, and then rounding and going through the northeast US coastline. Our area of interest is going to be one of those two areas, but what do you think? What season would we typically expect the jet to be pretty far north like that?
Let's eliminate completely the 3 winter months.
Could be summer, because if you look over the western United States, the jet is actually kind of far north.
True.
Over into Canada. So all right, let's keep it narrowed down to that 9-month span.
Yeah.
from late winter into early fall.
Let's kick it on over to the mid-level map.
Taking a look at the mid-level map, which is around 18,000 feet or so, well, we've got a low pressure area off of the southwest Florida coast. We've also got a deep carving low pressure area over the northeast United States, as well as low pressure off of the Washington and Oregon coastline.
A lot going on.
So again, those are our areas of interest. Also, one other thing to note is the trough that is swinging down through the Great Lakes areas as well.
Yeah, and if you watched case number 1, that trough had a lot to do with the weather event. That trough carried cold fronts and storm systems across the United States. It's kind of far to the east, so I wonder what this trough is going to be doing for this specific event.
Let's take a look at our next clue, and that is the sea surface temperatures.
Yes, so if you're familiar with case number 1, you will note that this is a different map than we saw. What could this helpful piece of information be indicating weather event-wise? Are we talking winter storm? Are we talking tornadoes? Are we talking something else? Here we're looking at the tropics. So maybe our event is tropical in nature. What do you note about the colors on this map?
So when you take a look at the legend at the bottom, you can see that the cooler temperatures, the blues and the greens, indicate cooler waters. The warmer colors indicate warmer temperatures for the ocean. So we're looking at the yellows, the oranges, and the reds. So we can see that the warmer temperatures extend all the way through the Caribbean and right along the US East Coast up through North Carolina, and then it goes out east of there. So
yeah,
interesting.
Pretty warm over there in the Atlantic and Caribbean and the Gulf as well.
That's right. And we also got over on the west coast of Mexico too, but looking at our other clues, it doesn't look like that's an area of interest. So right. I think we'll stay primarily over the Gulf and the East Coast at this point.
So this map helps us get that region narrowed down to, let's say, the southeast Atlantic coast and the Gulf.
Can you see where this is going?
Going over to clue number 4, it is our trusty skew-T log P diagram. Dad, you love thermodynamics.
I do.
Tell us about it.
So let's take a look. So if you remember from our other weather detective video, we did have an example. So some of you have knowledge with this already. So taking a look at this thermal profile, we usually identify where the freezing line is, and that's that blue line right there. And we see that the temperature and the dew point are well above that freezing line. So one can take a gander at the time of year So we're looking at least like a 22, 23 degrees C, which is in the low 70s Fahrenheit for both temperature and dew point. So maybe we could narrow this down to, it could be a summertime event or an early fall or very late springtime for this location. We see the winds are generally, let's see, going, so it kind of veers a little bit there in the lower, and then it kind of stays pretty much with some increasing speed. But the big thing that comes up that catches my eye is that the temperature and dew point are very close together throughout just about the whole profile. The
whole thing, basically.
So that means that it's pretty much saturated. So you have at least cloud cover. It might be raining. That's another clue right there, is that it's very saturated at very warm temperatures, even going up aloft. That's a pretty warm profile.
Yeah, and when we say saturated, when the dew point is the same degree of temperature as the temperature, it means that there's 100% relative humidity. The gloomy, the rainy kind of day. Another thing that is on a SKU-T diagram that we look at specifically when we're looking at trying to tell what kind of weather event this is the CAPE value.
That's right.
And if you notice on this one, it's 0. There's nothing going on. The atmosphere is pretty stable at this point. So what weather event can we pretty much rule out if the CAPE is 0?
Well, to me, for this location, it doesn't look like to be a big severe weather outbreak. No supercells. It looks like it could be just a heavy rain event because it is pretty saturated, well up into, 300, 200 millibars. So a heavy rain event, I think, would be probably where I would lean with this one.
Yeah, and one of the major cautions with this event so far that we can pretty much say for certain is flooding.
Let's take a look at our next clue, and that is the, sorry, hold on.
He doesn't know what it is. It's fine.
Let's take a look at our next clue, and that is the SPC's Convective Outlook product.
Yes, this is the map that tells us whether or not SPC on this day was going gung-ho for severe weather. If you look at the map, well, we can tell what state we're looking at for the event because it's the only thing going on.
Narrowing it down now.
Okay. We do have an enhanced risk for severe weather, so something to keep an eye on as we move forward through the rest of SPC's products.
Let's cycle through the next few clues. This one here is now the hail outlook, and you could see pretty much less than a 5% chance, so probably not going to be a hail event with this one.
Yep, which rules out strong updrafts, which are normally associated with supercells. So if the SKU-T didn't tell us, this pretty much confirms our event today is not a tornado event.
So what else can we infer? And that is that by definition, if you're looking for severe thunderstorms, it's based on what criteria? Hail size?
Hail size, potential for tornado.
And wind speed. So we might be looking more at a wind event versus a hail event. Okay. So let's keep going.
Let's keep going. Now what's interesting is that everything is pointing to no supercells, yet you can see here that there is a 10% chance for tornadoes on this day, which means that the main lifting mechanism that's going to fire off this tornado potential is not associated with those upper level things that we looked at on the earlier maps. It's not associated with supercells, so it has to be associated with a different type of event.
What could that be? And the next clue here, again, we're looking at the wind product, the wind potential there, again, over Florida, pretty much the same area as the enhanced and slight risk areas. So yeah, definitely leaning toward the wind side of the event here.
Yeah, so based on these outlooks, let us answer the question, which state are we looking at here? What event is our state in?
Well, let's see. I would have to say Florida at this point.
Yeah, let's go with that. All right, our event is sometime in the summer, late summer, early fall, potentially late spring, probably leaning towards the summer months, Florida. Okay, by now, we can hear you shouting.
Just tell us already.
Okay. And some of you have the event down. We're getting to it. We're almost there.
Almost there.
Let's look at a couple more clues before we get to the end. Oh my gosh, look at that mystery map. What could it be? What does this map show us? And our event is, drumroll please.
Well, if you could take a look at this, you're probably very familiar with spaghetti model maps, and you know what kind of event happens with spaghetti model maps, and that is a hurricane event. So we've narrowed it down to being a hurricane event. It's going to impact Florida, but
Gulf Coast
hurricane
specifically, as
That's
we can
right.
see here, we have a couple different path options. And if you look at this map, you might be familiar, as we've had certain hurricanes come up in the past couple months that follow similar tracks. So we saw that in some of your comments as well, but let's try to see if we can narrow down specifically a month, maybe a day, and the name of the hurricane in this event.
Now we go to our trusty fax machine and let's take a look at some of the information that has come across the wire. Kayla, go ahead and kick us off.
You know, I think we need a new fax machine because the ink splatters are really covering up a lot of key information here. But if we look closely, there's still a lot of information to be gleaned from this text product. We are looking at the Storm Prediction Center's convective outlook. So this is the text product that went with all the maps that we talked about a few minutes ago. And they are talking about the enhanced risk for severe thunderstorms. It is across east central, we don't know, but we can take a gander that it probably says Florida, being as that is where the map told us to look. And it is in association with something. And at this point, we can deduce that it is in association with a hurricane. But which hurricane is it? What month are we looking at? The next product is an area forecast discussion from a National Weather Service office somewhere. We don't know which station it is. So let's see what they have to say and figure out if we can tell where exactly this hurricane is going to make landfall.
Now, I don't have my glasses on, so pardon me, I've got to lean in a little bit and take a look at some of these.
Do you want this?
Oh yeah, there we go. Let me see. Yeah, perfect. Is it sad I still have to lean in a little bit? But yeah, so taking a look at this text product, it's talking about life-threatening storm surge. Well, there we go. We're leaning toward a hurricane. Freshwater flooding, winds, tornadoes. There's also some wording in here about drier or more stable air expected to wrap around after the event leaves. And there's also dangerous marine conditions. So obviously, this is going to be a strong hurricane.
Strong hurricane.
Wording is starting to lead us down the path of this is a strong hurricane that's going to hit. So my suspicion is that this is an area forecast discussion from maybe a Florida National Weather Service. It could be Tampa, it could be Tallahassee, it could be Key West, or even Mobile, Alabama if it shifted a little bit further west. So I would say it's a National Weather Service forecast from one of those areas. Let's take a look at our next clue that comes from our handy dandy fax machine that we need to upgrade.
Once again.
As well as our communication systems. But there is some very interesting wording here, talking about some strong hurricane winds.
Yes, so the outage is kind of making it difficult to read parts of this document, but there's still a lot left in here that we can glean from, including the words such as catastrophic. The wind speeds that we can see were harvested from the Hurricane Hunter planes. If you're familiar, that's what that first sentence is. Air Force Reserves and NOAA. I'm assuming that says Hurricane Hunter planes. They are out in this storm, which again means that this is a storm that they really want to keep an eye on. They're using words such as catastrophic, and they have measured wind speeds earlier at 135 knots and now at 155 knots. Translating this into miles per hour, this is pretty darn close to becoming a Category 5 hurricane, if not already, as the maximum winds are now set to 135 knots. And using the word catastrophic means that they are pretty serious. So this is a major hurricane hitting the Gulf Coast of Florida based on what else we can glean from the track information on this. And then they're also talking about that trough that we saw in earlier images coming down and pulling it maybe over the Atlantic. They're talking about it might strengthen in intensity again, and there might be additional landfalls later with this hurricane.
So based on all this information, we know it's going to be a very powerful hurricane.
Yes.
We know it's going to hit on the west side of Florida.
Yeah, and that is why the enhanced risk and everything is on the east coast of Florida as the bands wrap around and as the hurricane moves across the state. So again, confirming that this is a strong hurricane on the west coast that's going to move across the state.
Based on all this information, let's look at the three questions that we ask, and that is when does this event take place? Looks most likely a summertime, early fall event. Which city, state will be impacted? We talked about Florida, the southeast US eventually. And then what is the main weather threat? We know it's going to be a hurricane. And should we warn the public? Absolutely.
It's going to be a strong, catastrophic are the words that we saw in that text product. Absolutely. send out the watches and the warnings. This is going to be a major event affecting potentially multiple states.
That's right. So with all that said, bonus points for those of you that got the event correct.
Yep.
All right, so the event is, drum roll please. The event is the 2022 Hurricane Ian event.
Yes, and a lot of you who are from Florida probably picked this out immediately. It has been a crazy few years for hurricanes in Florida. With this one, we also had Irma, and then the couple from this year. It has been a crazy few years, especially with I-named storms, which I-named storm, what month were we in?
Oh, September.
It was September. It was September. So Hurricane Ian was a Category 5 storm just until right before landfall, where it dropped down to a Category 4 and made landfall near Fort Myers, Florida on September 28th, 2022. As it crossed the state of Florida, it did fall back to a tropical storm, but quickly strengthened back to a Category 1 hurricane over the Atlantic before making landfall a second time on the coast of South Carolina and moving up into North Carolina. Hurricane Ian was also the deadliest hurricane to strike Florida in a very long time, as well as being the strongest hurricane to make landfall in Florida since Hurricane Michael in 2018. It was also the first Category 5 Atlantic hurricane since 2019, so there was a pretty good gap of no Category 5 storms in the Atlantic for 3 years there. As the outer bands moved through this area, there was a lot of damage to the outer banks of North Carolina as flooding happened over there.
So taking a look at the information that came across from our trusty fax machine, the information came from the National Weather Service in Tampa Bay in Florida, and the other information came from the National Hurricane Center.
Oh look, the fax machine, it works again!
Our outage has now cleared up.
The communication issue is gone! We have received the actual information!
That's right. It was resent when communication was reestablished,
yes.
And we got the full product again. So, and for those of you that guessed Helene and Milton, those were good guesses because a lot of things were very similar, as well as Irma and, like you said, other hurricanes.
So there you have it. Weather Detective case number 2 was Hurricane Ian.
Consider it solved.
Solved. Comment down below if you correctly solved this case. Comment if you were close, as well as letting us know if you want to see a full case study on Hurricane Ian. If you're new to the channel, we also do case studies where we break down exactly what went down weather-wise on days of these memorable events. So if this is an event that you would like to see us turn into a case study, definitely let us know. Again, if you like what you saw, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below so you never miss the next Weather Detective case or Meteorology Monday. If you're interested in learning more about weather, we would love to have you join us over on School of Weather. Again, the link is the top one in the description box. If you want to support our channel, check out our Patreon page. It means a lot that some of you have decided to support our channel and help us keep doing what we do. And if you want to follow along our weather adventures, check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Until next time, I'm Weather Detective Kayla.
And I'm Weather Detective Jim.
Thanks for watching.
And we'll see you for the next case.
Elementary! My dear Watson!